Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really crucial story from the Hebrew Bible found in 1 Kings chapter 12.
That's right. It's all about what happens right after King Solomon dies, a major transition point.
Yeah, a transition that, well, doesn't exactly go smoothly. It's about leadership, a big split, and choices that just change everything for these people.
It really does. So Solomon's gone, and the focus shifts immediately to his son, Rehoboam.
Okay.
But it's not like a simple coronation. The text tells us Rehoboam actually goes to Shechem.
Shechem, why there? Not Jerusalem.
Exactly. He goes there because, it says, all the Israelites are gathered there specifically to make him king.
Interesting. So it implies the tribes, or at least the northern ones, need to sort of consent. It's not automatic.
Precisely. It suggests his legitimacy, especially over all the tribes, needs their public affirmation, and they've chosen this away from the capital.
Okay, so everyone's gathered in Shechem, and then this figure from the past shows up again. Jeroboam.
Yes. Jeroboam, son of Nebat. The text reminds us he'd actually fled from Solomon, who was living in Egypt.
Right, in exile.
But he hears Solomon's dead, and he comes back. And it's not just him wandering in.
Oh.
The source says the assembly actually sent for him. So he arrives with the whole assembly of Israel. It's like he's their chosen representative.
So he's leading the delegation, basically, and they have something specific they want to discuss with the new king, Rehoboam.
They certainly do. They come to him with a clear grievance. They say straight up, your father put a heavy yoke on us.
Okay, the heavy yoke. What does that mean in practice? Forced labor. High taxes.
Likely both, tied to Solomon's massive building projects and administration. They're very specific. Lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, then we will serve you.
So it's conditional loyalty. They're laying down terms right at the start.
It's absolutely a negotiation. We'll accept you as king if you ease up on what your father did. It's quite bold, really.
How does Rehoboam react initially?
Well, he doesn't give an immediate answer. He tells them, essentially, go away for 3 days. Come back then, and I'll tell you.
Buys himself some time. Time to get advice, presumably.
Exactly. And this is where it gets fascinating. He consults two very different groups. First, the elders.
Solomon's old guard, the guys who served his father.
Yep. These are the experienced advisors, the ones who knew the statecraft, probably knew all about that heavy yoke because they helped manage it.
Makes sense. So he asked them, what should I say?
He does. How would you advise me to answer these people? And their advice is, well, pretty savvy, focused on the long game.
What do they suggest?
They tell him, if today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer.
Be a servant to the people.
Yeah, that's the key phrase. Then they will always be your servants. It's about humility, concession now for long-term loyalty.
Wow. Give them what they want, basically. Show some grace, and they'll stick with you. Sounds like solid political advice.
It does seem that way. Appeasement now secures the kingdom later.
Ugh.
But Rehoboam,
He doesn't take it.
the text is very clear. He rejected the advice the elders gave him, turned away from that experienced counsel.
So where does he go next?
He turns to the young men, his peers, the ones who grew up with him who were now serving him.
Ah, his buddies. Probably grew up in the palace, maybe a bit insulated from the whole heavy yoke reality.
That's a likely implication. They shared his background, his privilege, and he asks them the same question. What's your advice? How should we answer these people asking us to lighten the yoke?
And I'm guessing they have a different take?
Oh, completely. Polar opposite. Their advice isn't about service or appeasement. It's about dominance, raw power, intimidation.
How so? What do they tell him to say?
They tell him to hit back hard, use language designed to, frankly, terrify them.
Like what?
Like saying, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist.
Whoa. What a bizarre, almost grotesque image.
It's meant to convey overwhelming strength, right? That he's vastly more severe than Solomon ever was, and then they give him the explicit threat.
The whips and scorpions part?
Exactly. My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions.
From whips to scorpions, that's chilling. It's a promise of more suffering, more oppression.
It's pure threat. Forget winning loyalty. This is about demanding submission through fear. Doesn't seem very sustainable.
No kidding. So the 3 days are up. Jeroboam and the people come back for the answer.
They do. And Rehoboam, he makes his choice. He follows the young men's advice.
He actually says it.
He does. The text says he rejected the elders' counsel and spoke those harsh words directly to the people. My father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips, I will scourge you with scorpions.
Unbelievable. He doubles down on the oppression.
He does. And the text adds its own commentary here. It says, the king did not listen to the people. That failure to listen is presented as the direct trigger for what happens next.
But then there's that other layer the text adds, isn't there? Something about divine will.
Yes, this is crucial. Right after describing Rehoboam's disastrous decision, the narrative states, this turn of events was from the Lord.
From the Lord.
To fulfill the word, the Lord had spoken to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah the Shilonite.
Ah, so there was a prophecy earlier predicting this split.
Exactly. A prophet named Ahijah had told Jeroboam he'd get 10 tribes. So the text is framing Rehoboam's terrible choice, his human blunder, as simultaneously being part of God's predetermined plan.
That adds a whole different dimension. It makes you wonder about free will versus destiny in this story.
It absolutely does. It's a tension the text presents directly. But regardless of the divine angle, the people's reaction is purely based on Rehoboam's words.
And how do they react?
Immediately. Seeing he won't listen, won't offer any relief, they just explode. They renounce the Davidic dynasty on the spot.
What do they say?
Their cry is famous. What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, O Israel. Look after your own house, O David.
To your tents, O Israel. That sounds final, like we're out of here.
It is. It's a declaration of secession. They're saying, David's dynasty, your problem now, Judah. We're going home. And the text confirms. So the Israelites went home. This is the rebellion. The kingdom splits right here.
Wow. So Rehoboam is left with.
Just the people living in the towns of Judah, the northern tribes have walked out.
And Rehoboam's next move. Does he try to reconcile?
Quite the opposite. In what seems like another incredibly poor decision, he sends out Adoniram.
Adoniram. Who's he?
The text specifically identifies him as the official in charge of forced labor.
Wait. He sends the supervisor of the forced labor, the very thing they were complaining about, out to the people who just rebelled over it.
It beggars belief, doesn't it? Maybe it was a last-ditch attempt to assert authority, or maybe just profound political deafness.
And how does that go over?
About as well as you'd expect. The text says, all Israel, meaning the northern tribes, stoned Adoniram to death.
Good grief. A violent end.
Shows just how enraged they were. And Rehoboam realizes his own life is in danger. He scrambles to get into his chariot and flees back to Jerusalem.
So he's literally run out of town. His authority over the north is completely gone.
Utterly. And the narrative underlines the permanence of this split. It adds a comment reflecting the time it was written. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day.
Meaning this wasn't just a temporary spat. This division lasted for generations, creating the two separate kingdoms, Israel in the north, Judah in the south.
Correct. And while Rehoboam flees south, the northern tribes take the next logical step. They formally make Jeroboam their king.
The guy who led the delegation who came back from Egypt.
Yes. They call him back to the assembly, and he becomes king over all Israel, meaning the northern kingdom. The text says, only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the house of David.
Though later Benjamin gets grouped with Judah too, right? Forming the southern kingdom.
That's right. Judah and Benjamin stick with Rehoboam in the south.
So Rehoboam gets back to Jerusalem. Is he just going to accept this, losing most of his kingdom?
Not initially. His first instinct is military action. He musters his forces.
From Judah and Benjamin.
Yes. The whole house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And it's a huge army. The text mentions 180,000 fighting men.
Wow. And their goal?
To make war against the northern tribes, the house of Israel, and basically force them back under his rule, to regain the kingdom by force.
A civil war brewing.
It looks that way. But then another intervention.
Divine again.
Yes. The word of God comes through a prophet named Shemaiah, a man of God.
And what's the message this time?
It's directed at Rehoboam and his army. And it's a direct command from the Lord. Do not go up to fight against your brothers, the Israelites. Go home, every one of you. And here's the key part again. For this is my doing.
This is my doing. So God is saying, don't fight this division, I caused it.
That's precisely how the text presents it. The split itself, and now the prevention of the war to undo it, are both attributed to the Lord's plan.
And do they listen this time?
They do. It says they obeyed the word of the Lord and went home. They abandoned the invasion plan.
So the division is cemented, no reunification by force.
Correct. The two kingdoms are now a reality, which means Jeroboam, up north, needs to consolidate his new kingdom.
Right. What does he do?
He starts by fortifying key cities, Shechem, where he was made king, and Peniel, setting up his power base.
Makes sense. But then he runs into a problem, a religious one.
He perceives one, yes. The text actually lets us into his thought process. He starts worrying.
About what?
He thinks, okay, my people are Israelites. Their main place of worship, the temple, is in Jerusalem.
Which is now the capital of the other kingdom, Rehoboam's kingdom.
Exactly. Jeroboam fears that if his people keep going south to Jerusalem for the major festivals and sacrifices, their hearts and loyalties will eventually follow. They'll start thinking Rehoboam is their rightful king again.
And that could be dangerous for Jeroboam personally.
Very. He literally thinks they will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. His political survival feels threatened by the religious geography.
So his solution is driven by political insecurity.
That's how the text portrays it. It says, after seeking advice, we don't know from whom the king made 2 golden calves.
Whoa! Golden calves, that sounds familiar. And not in a good way. Echoes of the Exodus story.
Strong echoes. And Jeroboam leans right into it. He tells the people, it's too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Basically, it's too inconvenient.
Okay.
Then he presents the calves and says, here are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.
Wow. He directly attributes the Exodus, their foundational liberation story, to these idols.
Yes, it's a radical religious claim designed to sever the connection to Jerusalem's temple. He places 1 calf in Bethel near the southern border.
Conveniently located for people near Judah.
Right, and the other one way up north in Dan, making worship accessible within his kingdom.
How does the text judge this act?
Immediately and harshly, says point blank. And this thing became a sin. It notes people traveled even as far as Dan to worship. This wasn't just politics. It was seen as leading the nation into idolatry.
And did he make other religious changes too?
He did. He set up other shrines, these high places, for local worship. And crucially, he appointed new priests.
New priests? What was wrong with the old ones?
The tradition was that priests had to be Levites, from the tribe of Levi. Jeroboam appointed priests from all sorts of people, specifically not Levites, another major break from established practice.
Okay.
And he even messed with the calendar, instituting a major festival in the 8th month, deliberately mimicking the main festival in Judah, but, as the text says, a month of his own choosing. He personally officiated at the altar in Bethel, sacrificing to the calf.
So he created a whole alternative religious system. New gods, new places, new priests, new schedule, all, it seems, to prop up his political power.
That's the clear implication of the narrative. Political necessity leads to what the text condemns as profound religious sin.
Okay, so stepping back from the details of 1 Kings 12, what are the big takeaways here? Why should this ancient story matter to, us or anyone listening today?
Well, first, it's just a classic, if painful, case study in leadership. Rehoboam's choice. Ignoring wise, experienced advice for the harsh, arrogant words of his inexperienced peers.
Yeah.
It directly led to the kingdom breaking apart. It really hammers home how critical listening is, how damaging pride and rigidity can be for a leader. Choosing intimidation over service had immediate, catastrophic results.
It's a powerful warning about who you listen to and the cost of, being a bad leader.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then there's the whole religion and politics angle.
Jeroboam's story.
Right. You see how his very real political fears losing his kingdom, maybe his life, drive him to completely reshape the religious landscape, creating idols, changing priesthoods.
Yeah, all to keep people away from Jerusalem and loyal to him.
Exactly. And the text presents this not just as a clever political strategy, but as a terrible sin that leads the people astray. It makes you think about how political motives can distort or manipulate religious belief and practice, something that's certainly not confined to ancient history.
A timeless issue. And what about that other element, the from the Lord part?
That's the third big thing, I think, this constant tension in the chapter. You have all these very human actions. Rehoboam's folly, the people's anger, Jeroboam's calculation, but the narrative keeps insisting it's also fulfilling a divine plan.
Right. This is my doing, God says.
It forces you, the reader, to grapple with that. How do human choices and consequences interact with a concept of divine sovereignty or destiny? The story doesn't necessarily resolve it neatly, but it puts that question right out there. What does it mean when human failure seems to align with a stated divine purpose?
Lots to think about there regarding responsibility and perspective.
Definitely.
So this chapter, 1 Kings 12, it really just lays it all bare, doesn't it? A kingdom fractured, loyalties broken, worship redefined, all spinning out from that one crucial moment of choice at the start of Rehoboam's reign.
The cascade of consequences.
Yeah. It leaves us thinking about the way of advice, the danger of inflexible power, and this complex picture of human decisions playing out within what's described as a larger, perhaps predetermined narrative. As you think back over this story, what's the one element that really sticks with you the most?